Leon Carte had barely raised his haven shelter from a royal capital into a crown-spire imperial capital when 10 dynasties moved to tear it down. He never occupied those cities himself. Each one held millions of civilians, and feeding them would have been a burden. He accepted gifts instead, and that income gave him enough resources to upgrade again. He ordered Marcus at Pocket Frontier to upgrade the level 14 royal capital. Trillions of basic resources poured in. The shelter rose to level 15 and became a crown-spire imperial capital. The walls thickened, the sea around Pocket Frontier turned blue, and Leon could now raise Leviathan Tide Riders and Deepwater Frogland there without pollution. The promotion changed Leon too. He became an emperor and gained sovereign authority over his territory. That news reached every emperor on the Warlands continent. The message also said the new emperor possessed only one imperial capital. To the 10 dynasties that looked like an easy prize, armies were sent at once. 3 days later, Leon learned his shelter was under attack. The 10 Kingdom war host had struck together. He sent troops back through trade, told Marcus to hold first, turned into a storm-scale true dragon, took Clara Shaw with him, and flew back. He saw 10,000 warships filling the sea. Leviathan Tide Riders and Deepwater Frogland were only buying time. Marcus had covered the walls with Emberdrake cannon bastions. But the invasion did not stop. Enemy commanders shouted rewards as more units and ladders came forward. Marcus answered with skeletons dropped from the wall, bones and corpses piled beneath the fortifications, and the coalition stacked bodies into steps. No one dared send flying units into the sky. Thunder sparrows ruled the air. As the bones kept rising, Marcus sent in bone overlords, which fused the remains into 10-meter bone colossus giants. The enemy answered with Galebolt Repeater, Cavalry Mammoth War Riders, and Titan-bound Colossus Guard, and the giants began to lose ground. Leon struck from the sky with thunder breath, pierced dozens of heavy units, and the Crystal Skeleton King turned those dead enemies into colossal skeleton soldiers that barely stabilized the line. He landed on the wall. His dragon pressure forced beast form troops back, but humanoid units still rushed him. Marcus said they would not hold. Leon said he would act. He did not want to strike the generals of the Warforged Dominion himself, but the enemy had pushed too far. Leon rose into the sky again and gave them one final warning: leave his shelter's range, and he would let the matter pass. Stay, and their life or death would be their own. Most commanders laughed. Bastion Crow alone urged the expedition Marshal Cedric Valehart to withdraw. First, Cedric refused. Then a Blackwall Dynasty commander hurled a 100-meter spear of military chi into the sky. It pierced Leon's scales and wounded him. Leon ripped it free, crushed it, and summoned the Ghost Head Guillotine. After refining the black crystal, its ruin judgment rate had risen from 10% to 25%. Divine power poured into the Ghost Head Guillotine. A ring of black light spread until the entire shelter territory was covered, consuming hundreds of millions of divine power. Bastion Crow felt the aura and begged Cedric Valehart to withdraw, but Cedric had him dragged away and sentenced to 100 military strokes. Leon issued a divine decree: every enemy life form in the designated range underwent ruin judgment. Black skull heads appeared above units, soldiers, and generals. Then death fell. Nearly a quarter of the generals and soldiers died. The units they had summoned through martial manifestation power vanished with them. The battlefield reversed in a single moment. In the Bronzicris Dynasty fleet alone, 8 generals, nearly 3,000 soldiers, and 500,000 units disappeared. Cedric Valehart regretted ignoring Bastion Crow, ordered him to take the soldiers home, spat blood, and died on the spot. The same collapse spread through the other fleets. Leon ordered the counterattack. Skeleton Knights charged across the field, raised skeleton soldiers from the corpses, and turned former comrades against the living. The battlefield dissolved into chaos, and the 10 Kingdom armies tried to flee. Thousands of ships turned away. Leon ordered the Leviathan Tide Riders in the deep to form the abyssal death maelstrom. Ships were dragged in and torn apart. Soldiers drowned or were ground to pieces. White flags began to rise, and Leon stopped the attack. The survivors surrendered, were locked in the dungeon, and lost their resources to Leon. 3 days later, the battlefield had been cleared. Lion's skeleton army had increased 100-fold and exceeded 300 million. the capital could not hold that many. He carried out massive synthesis, reduced the total to 50 million, and raised the quality. After counting the spoils, Leon and Marcus found that the resources were enough to build another top-tier city. Pocket Frontier could barely hold one imperial capital. The next city had to be on the mainland. News of the defeat spread through the 10 nations when they heard that roughly half the captured troops had survived. Envoys came to negotiate. Leon refused to swallow the loss quietly. If they did not cut land and pay heavily, no one would leave. He gave them 3 days. The envoys tried to pressure him. Leon mocked them. In the end, the 10 nations carved out a vast tract of land for him in the heartland. It was ringed by mountains on 3 sides, faced water on one. Leon sent Marcus there immediately to found a city. Leon also opened a business processing Blightspawn aberration corpses. Trade routes formed. More cities rose beside the first. 3 months later, 10 cities stood together like a small country at the center of the 10 nations. Repeated attacks struck those cities, and everyone was beaten back by the skeleton army, and the ghost head guillotine after that. No one in the 10 nations dared challenge Leon's authority again in private. They had already accepted his state as the 11th nation. But being emperor of a small nation was still not enough to leave the Warforged dominion. The invasion itself had to end. Leon could process polluted corpses, but the remaining 3 continents still faced major trouble. Leon expanded permissions, rented out skeleton labor and shadow locusts through other sanctum players, and sacrificed the fed shadow locusts for greater gains. 3 years passed like that. Leon reached the peak of the Emperor Lifeform stage. Clara and Marcus reached the late Emperor Lifeform stage, and when the last outlet was sealed, the invasion ended in failure. Leon and the other sanctum players finally received recognition from the will of the Warforged dominion, and were allowed to return to the sanctum civilization. Leon, Clara, and Marcus received permanent transit channels, linking the Warforged dominion to each of their sanctums. Instructor Syria Dawnveil welcomed them, and led them into the vault. Clara chose an Aetherwing gem. Marcus chose the Nine-Tailed Jade, and Leon chose the Tier V Divinity of War. It accelerated his understanding of Ruined Divinity, and 5 War Divine Arts awakened. Then Syria called again. The Academy had made an exception, and given Leon a rare quota. He would represent a God King in a wager battle between Aurelia, the Life Sovereign, and Nethros, the Death Sovereign. Leon accepted. She also reminded him that the wager battle would take place in 2 weeks, and that first place in Imperial Ascension Academy would bring 1 level 4 holy relic every week, and 10 points of divinity every month. Leon said he would take first place. After the call ended, Leon returned to his sanctum. No interspecies fighting had broken out again. Locusts still formed the vast majority. At 400 billion, Tigerkin came next at more than 10 billion, and the skeleton race had passed 100 million, and the skeleton race had passed 100 million. Then Gale Revenant prayed, and asked Leon to go to Celestial Vault Spire in the 8th stratum. Leon found a strange life form, unknown to the sanctum civilizations. Records that looked like a black octopus tentacle, and released slight mental pollution that could turn victims into puppets. Leon knew where it had come from. The mutation core wearing Leon's own appearance called the creature a plague coil mindworm. Leon erased every one of them, but the mutation core said the data had already been engraved into its genes, and it could make more. The mutation core mocked him and reminded Leon that though it had been separated from him, their lives were still linked. It could secretly use his permissions, devour divinity, improve itself, and alter nearby species. That was why Leon had separated it from his body. It then asked for research materials. Leon hesitated, then agreed on one condition: anything it created had to remain inside the 8th stratum. The mutation core accepted, and Leon left the tower. After he was gone, the mutation core's expression darkened. The plague coil mindworms. Mental pollution was already showing good results as evolving hypnosis. Leon stepped out of the tower, still feeling that something was off, but his divine sense found nothing wrong. He returned to guiding Locustman's civilization, and before long, a 3rd storm-scale true dragon was born.